Dealing with depression is never easy because it's one of those things where there's no direct cause, so there's no direct cure, and then there's also no guarantee that anything that you try will relieve you of that feeling. And it's also one of those things that it's hard to admit because you just never really know where you stand. It's like, am I just sad? Is this just a normal feeling? Am I depressed? It's such a complex thing that we don't really know how to come to terms with it, how to face it, or how to handle it best. And again, how we handle it has to change with us. It's all very much in our heads. It's very subjective. There's no definitives surrounding it, and it makes it a difficult thing to deal with. Irrespective of your position in life, it could happen to absolutely anyone. And that feeling of guilt of having absolutely everything but still not being okay can then send you into an even worse spiral of low self-worth, or being harsh on yourself, or just thinking that you're a terrible person, and that again leads back into the depression. I'm Chris Milan, and if you want to know more, then keep watching, and if you like what you've heard so far, then don't forget to subscribe to my channel. In this video, I'll be talking more about the causes and how best to process or manage how you feel, because I can't really say how to stop it, because it's one of those things that may never really go away, but there's ways to control it. Depression can be defined in a very subjective manner. The definition given by Google or mentalhealth.org.uk says that it's defined as a common mental health problem where patients experience feelings of low mood, loss of appetite, guilt, low self-worth, and loss of interests. I'd start by saying we have to understand where our destructive thoughts are coming from. We as humans, our minds can run absolute mayhem. It's like an undisciplined child that's just left in a room alone with every dangerous weapon, every dangerous thing there is possible to have. You just let your thoughts run uncontrolled, and then in that type of situation, your thoughts are left to control you. I read this, I forgot what book it was, but it said that positivity isn't always a default. And for many of us, being positive takes effort, it takes time. We have to consciously make an effort to be positive. And if we let our thoughts run uncontrolled, thoughts lead to feelings which lead to actions. And unless you understand that whole process, you will do things and question why, or you'll feel things and question why. And it's because you let your mind spiral out of control. You let your thoughts run wild. This is very difficult to explain, but you are a separate person from your thoughts. Your thoughts don't define who you are. It's almost an exaggeration of a situation, and you have to separate yourself from those thoughts and take control of it, because if you don't take control of it, it will take control of you. So CBT stands for cognitive behavioral therapy. How it works is that it looks at dealing with the root of the problem, which is how you're thinking. And from realizing how you're thinking, you can then make the necessary changes that are needed to process thoughts in a much more constructive way. For example, compare and despair. You only see the good and positive aspect in others, and in getting upset, you start to only see the negatives in yourself. Now, if you understand that this is a pattern of how you think, and you constantly start by comparing yourself to others and putting yourself down, then from that you start to feel feelings of low self-worth, like you're not as good as them, or you don't do things as well. Then from that you start to feel a lot less motivated, because you know no matter how hard you try, you'll never match up to that person that you have in a positive light. Now, if I can take control of that thought and say I'm constantly comparing myself, I can then make the change, or when I realize that my brain is moving off on a tangent to think about someone else and how great they are and how bad I am, I can stop the thought. And this sounds incredibly robotic, but I've been controlling my thoughts for a very long time. And when you start training yourself, it starts to become a habit. Now, the second thing is, so what I said earlier was depression can be defined as a mood disorder caused by a various amount of things. And in those things, there's chemical imbalances and there's biological changes in our body which can contribute to depression. So in women, we have our periods, and there's PMS. I'm in a bad mood, I'm gonna go cry and eat ice cream. But then there's a more severe form of PMS called PMDD, and this is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, where you feel severe emotional symptoms and physical symptoms during your period. So it's a more severe form of PMS, and only 2 to 5% of women suffer from PMDD. But again, understanding your cycles can help you to spot that you may be one of those ones suffering, because you might just think you get really moody around your periods, but you can't control it because it's literally a biological change in your body. Now, if you understand that change and you know how to manage it, you know that during this week that you're not going to give yourself anything too difficult to do, because you don't have the emotional capacity to handle things going wrong. So it's about learning how to manage what's to come. Next, so in terms of women, again, there's birth control. Now, the way birth control works is that there's 2 different forms. There's the combined pill, which is estrogen and progesterone, and the estrogen stops your ovulation, and the progesterone reduces the chances of the fertilized egg implanting itself on your uterus lining. Now, so that's a combined pill. Then there's progesterone only pill, which is just progesterone. So studies were done on synthetic progesterone, and it was found that they have significant effects on the chemicals in your brain, such as serotonin and monoamine oxidase. This then led to an increased risk of depression, irritability, and anxiety, especially in people who are already vulnerable. So you may have genetic predisposition to depression. You're just feeding yourself like a monthly dose of depression. Another study was done, and it was found that women that were on the combined pill were 23% more likely to suffer from depression. Teenagers that were on the pill were 80% more likely to suffer from depression. Now, if you've done anything with statistics, or you simply have common sense, 80% is a very, very significant number to be linked to depression. Sleep. So sleep is a complex one, because bad habits in sleep can lead to depression, but then depression can lead to bad habits in your sleep. So this is a very complex one. However, I think from the age of like 13, 14, I've been trying to do all-nighters with my friends and stay up as late as, and just be up 24 hours a day. And then leading that into being 20 and moving on into adulthood, there's this whole thing of like, you can't sleep if you want success. There's that saying that says, oh, Beyonce has the same 24 hours in a day as you. So there's this feeling that you sleeping is taking away from your productivity. Like in this whole capitalist society, this whole thing of like, if I want to be successful, I can't sleep. If I want money, no sleep till I'm dead, that type of thing. But this glamorization of bad habits is causing us to be a more depressed society, because we're getting less and less sleep in the name of work and in the name of money. But a study was done, and it was found that out of 19,000 people that had sleep disturbances, the one with the most amount of the most severe forms of sleep disturbance were 5 times more likely to suffer from depression. Then you may go through your day and you feel low, unmotivated, fatigued, like you don't have enough energy as you usually do. And you're probably thinking, why is that? But again, it's the choices that we're making. I don't want you guys to feel like I'm preaching, but these are the facts, and until we take control of a situation, it will continue to be out of hand. So it was found that, I think everyone knows this, but people who eat unprocessed whole foods were less likely to suffer from depression than people who had processed fried foods. Now, again, with this whole thing of glamorization, like being a uni student, there's this whole thing of, of eating packet noodles, and just living on really crappy food. Everyone knows that there's a lot of link between university and mental health, but then you could question, is it really university, or is it the habits that we pick up while we're there? So everyone's talking about, oh yeah, uni students don't eat anything apart from like ramen noodles, we barely have breakfast. Like, the eating habits that we're picking up is causing an increased strain on our mental health. So we're eating terribly and then not understanding why we feel the way that we do, but it's like there's a direct link between the type of foods that we're eating and our moods. Sugar is the next big one, like an absolutely massive thing. Even in regular juice, I don't think people understand how much sugar is actually in our foods and our drinks. Finding this out was insane. The addiction that you have to sugar is worse than the addiction that someone has to cocaine. That sounds absolutely insane, but because it's been so normalized to just eat and indulge, we don't really see it as a problem. It might be that today, and I'm guilty of this too, so don't see this as me talking down on you guys or just, you know, saying you need to fix this in your life, because it's just these small insignificant things, or things that we deem as insignificant, like just eating noodles for dinner for a week straight. But those simple choices are causing a major impact on our moods for that time being. While I can go on and on about the different causes, it's, again, as I said earlier, it's also about managing it. Now, this doesn't work for everyone, so as I said, there's no defined list because it's all personal to us, but I can only offer my advice. I do think that if it gets to a point where you can't control it yourself, that seeking professional help is a very good thing to do, because sometimes someone who is separated from you as a person in the whole situation is the best way forward. So understanding what keeps you sane. It's like having an evacuation drill. You need to know what to do when danger hits. For me personally, I like to make goals. I like to give myself simple things to work towards, so I'm not so much focused on how I feel, or I can motivate myself or make myself a little bit happier just by working towards something, because I think I'm a really big critic of self, so those can cause my destructive thoughts. Now, if I'm starting to do small things that make me feel better, then I won't so much think of myself so critically. I'm just like, oh, well done at doing this, or just pat yourself on the back. You know, you have to understand, as I said, if you understand the thoughts of where you're coming from, you can make your list of things that keep you sane. I like to listen to podcasts about anything inspiring, imagining your future. So right now you're feeling this certain way and you feel hopeless, but planning how you want your future to go can be helpful because it gives you something to feel hopeful for. Making daily choices. So I was listening to this podcast the other day because, again, I said when I'm in this place, I like to listen to these things, called The Compound Effect. And it was basically highlighting the idea that we make insignificant choices every single day that don't feel so relevant. But when we look back at the bigger picture, those small choices that we made every day bring us to the end result. Every day that you decide that you're just going to stay in your bed, that's you falling deeper and deeper into a hole that's going to be harder to get out of. If you make plans and you cancel on people all the time, that's you making a daily decision that doesn't feel important, but when you look back, you haven't seen your friends in months and you start to lose the relationships around you. There's also a thing of doing things out of emotion. So I'm guilty of this, where if I feel a certain type of way, I'm not going to do what needs to be done. But then if I continuously choose that behavior for 3 months, if I look back at those 3 months, it's like, whoa, I'm behind on my uni work, I haven't spoken to my friends, I haven't left my house. It's difficult enough that we have to function every day and try to keep this to ourselves. But then when everything you do is based on how you feel, you start to be destructive to your own future. So for example, someone who has a job may be depressed, but they have to account to going to work every day. They have to answer to someone. Now, if you don't necessarily have that stringent schedule where you're more free, for example, a creative or a freelancer, every day that they choose not to create a piece of work is a day that they lose out on making more money, or that next step towards building their portfolio. And that can be dangerous because every day it feels insignificant, but the bigger picture is going to add up in the end. So you have to sometimes work through your emotions. So even if you're feeling a certain way, still get up, still shower, still go through the list of things you had to do and work through them, because you can't let your emotions control everything. And I know that's difficult to do. I know it feels like if I feel sad, I should be allowed to just take a day and feel how I feel. And I do believe you should take time to feel how you feel, but there comes a point where you have to work through those feelings. Just those things of keeping active can make you feel better. Because if I'm depressed and I stay in my bed and my room's messy and I haven't showered, then those thoughts of being critical of self start to happen again. It's just like, I'm so useless, I can't even get up to shower, I can't even get dressed, I feel ugly. So again, the critical self begins. So again, controlling those destructive thoughts means taking steps that are difficult at the time, but will do nothing but good for you in the end. Getting rid of people that cause nothing but stress in your life. Honestly, I think this is so overlooked because we are so I feel like sometimes we're so consumed with ourselves that we forget to look at the bigger picture. So there's a lot of like videos that I see or stories that I hear of people putting themselves in situations that do nothing but harm them. For example, you like a guy and he doesn't like you back, but you're constantly running after him. That constant running after him and him constantly rejecting you is just eating away at your self-esteem. So why would you constantly put yourself in that position? It's the same thing as if the fire is hot and you touch it, it will burn your hand. But it's just because you can't see the physical effects, you don't really think about the impact that it's having on you. So you have to make the daily choices to subtract things from your life that aren't necessarily doing you good. Connecting with people. So I know it's difficult when you feel a certain type of way to just isolate yourself from the rest of the world, but we have to remember that, again, your thoughts are very powerful. And as much as I said that we have to separate ourselves from our thoughts to control them, we also have to pull ourselves away from being consumed with our own mind. Once we put ourselves in new environments or around other people to hear different things, we start to realize that there's more happening around us. For example, traveling, going somewhere new, it takes you out of the situation that you're in every day and it refreshes your mind, keeps you thinking that there's more to you than this. Even taking a drive or taking a walk in an area that you may potentially want to live in one day. These are the things that they're gonna give you those little pumps of happiness, and it may not last forever, but again, it's the small things adding up that actually matter. Seeing your friends, you may think that your problems are like the biggest problems in the world and you feel horrible, but then when you go around your friends and you laugh about these small things, it just triggers something in you that kind of takes away from that feeling. And even if it's only for that small 2 hours that you were with them, it still matters. I think the final point and the whole essence of what I'm trying to say is that everything that we do is a choice, and having depression definitely isn't one of those choices. But how we choose to manage and handle it is up to us, and whether that be seeking professional help, it's important to make the choice to choose you every single time. It won't be easy, but you have to start somewhere. And on that note, I'm going to end the video, but I hope this gave you some insight into how to deal with your feelings or cope with handling things that don't necessarily feel so great. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you enjoy the content that you saw. If you guys do feel comfortable discussing your experiences in the comments, then I'd love to hear more. But I'll see you in my next video.